Good morning, everyone. Oh, you can do better than that. Good morning, everybody. Hooray! Hello. My name is Vivienne Parry, and I'm delighted to welcome you all. I want to find out, first of you all, how many of you watch BBC programmes? Ooh, now I've got to find out what kind of programmes you watch. OK, what do you watch?
Oh, pretty much everything, in fact. Mainly BBC 1 and 2 and 4.
Right.
Yeah.
So, favourite programmes?
Oh, Science Club.
Science Club.
Big question.
Right?
Mock the Week.
Mock the Week. Anybody else? What do you watch? Top Gear. Anyone else watch Top Gear? No. No. What do you watch?
Peter.
What do you
I'm actually listening Radio 1.
Oh. Oh. What do you watch?
Not really BBC, no.
Oh. We may convert her yet. We may convert her yet. So, the BBC has been putting on science programmes for over 50 years. It has some absolutely fantastic content. And the thing that we've learnt from these 2 days a day is how important science is. But if we're going to continue communicating science effectively, and we need to do that, then the BBC is going to have to constantly refresh and change the way that it does its programmes so that we get that message out there as well as we can. So what we've got today is we've got a fantastic panel. We're going to show you some of the things that we've done. We're going to look at the way that we explore different formats and different technologies to communicate science effectively. And I warn you, we are going to have a bit of audience interaction. Is there anyone here who is an innovator? Is there anyone here who has a business with a... Oh, there's a man up back there. OK, so we are going to subject someone to a BBC interview to show you how to do it better. You're all looking worried now. So let me introduce our great panel to you. So, on the far left, a man that you will all know from Mock the Week. Dario O'Briain is a fantastic Irish comedian. He's also a scientist by background, so theoretical physics.
Yes, sorry, I'm just going to check that's working. Excuse me, put it in the right place on my face. Yes, I originally did degrees in maths and mathematical physics, and then ran away to the circus, essentially becoming a stand-up comedian. And about 15, 20 years into that, the BBC is very, very good at broadening its face's appeals, let's say, or allowing people who are known in one field to demonstrate a passion for something else, or have indulged themselves almost to a certain extent in terms of other things they wish to talk about. And then they moved into science broadcasting. So we've done about 4 years of a thing called Stargazing Live, 2 years of Science Club, and about 4 series now of a mathematics show on a different channel.
So explain what Stargazing Live is.
Stargazing Live began about 4 years ago. It's myself, and offering the more scientific heft is Professor Brian Cox.
He'll be completely unknown. Anybody know Brian Cox?
Yes, yes. So Cox and myself host a show which is now an hour and a half of live television across 3 nights, so 4.5 hours live television during a midweek in January, which is based entirely on astronomy and has... we have stargazing clubs, we have citizen science projects, we pick topics in individual shows. For example, this year was the Aurora, and we had an airplane flying sending live pictures of the Aurora back down the show. We have guests such as Chris Hadfield and Walt Cunningham this year, so we had an Apollo 7 astronaut and an ISS astronaut, and we are given essentially the run of the channel for 4.5 hours in the week for sheer pure science broadcasting.
And it's hugely popular.
It's enormously popular. The first year the figures were about 3.5 to 4 million. It averages out now to 3.5 million across straight through across these 3 nights. So it does exceptionally well. In terms of the web uptake of things we put out in the web, it's destroyed everything. Nothing is compared with it in terms of the amount of just the interactivity of it.
There's a lot of men with telescopes out there.
There are a lot of people with telescopes, and there are a lot of young people with telescopes, and it's tapped into that.
And also you do science club.
Science club, we've done
School of Hard Sums.
Yeah, School of Hard Sums is a bizarre Japanese television format where comedians compete with a mathematically more oriented comedian to solve problems. It's incredibly difficult to explain as a format and weird and generally slightly unjustifiable in some ways. But and so that runs on a small digital channel, which is in itself nothing to do especially with the BBC, but is a popular science show. Although the channel likes to think it's a comedy show, it's a popular science show, and it does very, very well. It's this channel's largest ever commission, but it's in the way that channels are organised in Britain. It can get a small audience of dedicated people there that if it was on the BBC One, I think it would probably wilt. And Science Club was just a magazine show, which will hopefully be returning in a different form in next year.
So Dara, one of the top presenters, but let me introduce you to one of the BBC's top producers, Helen Thomas. Now, Helen, you've worked on Top Gear, but you've also...
In my youth.
In her youth. You spun a Ferrari, I think.
I was in a Ferrari when it spun. It wasn't me, honest, Gov.
But you are an executive producer, so just tell people what an executive producer does.
We send out directors and producers to locations all across the world to have fun, and we sit in the office. We basically look after several series. So the BBC runs with directors and producers who make their own programmes, series producers who look after series, and then exec producers who look after many series. And I exec the last two series of Science Club with, or the last series of Science Club with Dara, and the last two series of Stargazing, and all sorts of other programmes, from medical documentaries, a series about brain surgery, to a series on BBC Three, which was a very youth-orientated science programme. So I think science should be for everybody, and one of my great joys is working across all 4 channels to bring science to as many people as I can. So
lovely. And Jackie Smith, another very celebrated executive producer. Tell me some of the sort of programmes that you get involved in.
Most recently, I've been working on BBC 4 science shows, which is particular.
It's posh.
Posh science. It's as hard as science gets on television. And we'll speak a little bit about this later, but it's one of the greatest opportunities as well as challenges, I think, in broadcasting, is to work out how you take the hardest, the toughest science and bring it to a mass audience in ways that are genuinely interesting. So lots of fun. I've had a colony of 1 million leafcutter ants just across from us in the office, and I did manage to take several of them.
That what happens to you when you work with the BBC. You end up with a colony of ants in your office.
Ants in your pants, quite literally, Vivienne. I got home one evening and discovered a few of them had made their way home with me. But it's a fantastic privilege to work in this job. I mean, Vivienne and I worked together many years ago, going far-flung places for Tomorrow's World.
Yes, when I was a child.
And I was barely in nappies, Vivienne, clearly. But we've come a long road since then. I think the face of science television has changed quite significantly. So interesting times.
OK, so let's have a look at some of the BBC's science output. Can we see the first film? Is that going to work?
Yeah,
yes,
I think
marvellous.
So, yeah.
Here we go.
We're going to build a planet up there. As an engineering challenge, it doesn't get much bigger.
Obviously a major malfunction.
You understand the implications of the oxygen being activated? The astronauts had to do that themselves, which means that they were alive.
It made me think of you. It made me think of you.
This is as high as it's possible to climb on any man-made structure on the planet.
This balloon will just float upwards all the way through the atmosphere.
Inside there is one of the geological wonders of the world.
The potential to do things with data is fantastic.
Look at that.
That's one of the biggest bits of natural destruction I've ever seen in my life. That was fantastic.
Could be the costliest natural catastrophe in the history of our planet.
I'm standing in the middle of something that you would never normally see.
We want to get a picture of your cat's natural, normal life.
I was just wondering why doing exercise is quite so hard.
3, 2, 1, and stop.
Look at that. That's just brilliant.
So, lots of different ways of seeing science. And actually, the way that we watch television has changed so much over the last, well, even over the last 5 years, let alone over the last 50 years. So, as we turn to increasingly diverse channels for our information, so we've had to adapt the way that we present science information, and the BBC has been the great innovating force across the globe for doing that. So, Jackie, how do you keep changing, keep refreshing the way that science is presented?
It's a question of finding a myriad different forms, Vivienne, and I think I'd like to throw a question to the audience. How many of you would come home from work after a day's work, pour a glass of wine, switch on the television and think, I want to be educated? Not a hand in the room. How many of you would think I want to be entertained? Yeah. The founding fathers of the BBC set us this challenge to make programmes that inform, educate and entertain. And bringing those two, one might think, competing imperatives together is the challenge and the opportunity we all face, and particularly for science. Now, science, at their best, science programmes should be exciting, inspiring, insightful, and enable you to see the world differently to the way you did before you switched that programme on. But frankly, at their worst, they can be didactic, dry, and dull. So our challenge is to keep finding the ways to make science engaging and exciting. And the days when the BBC had something of a monopoly of people's viewing time are so far in the past, it's hard to imagine them. We live not just in a multi-channel age, but an age where people can go online, find whatever they want, whenever they want it. Our content has to be engaging, exciting, and insightful, and people will come to it and be satisfied if they feel they've been informed and derived something educational from it. But that's not why they come. They come first and foremost to be entertained. So we need constantly to be reinventing what we do and finding the ways to make it gripping, compelling and unmissable. So how do we do that? Well, you might think the natural form for science is either reporting or documentary, but sometimes we venture into an entirely different format altogether, which is drama. Most recently, BBC Science produced a drama telling the story of Richard Feynman, a celebrated American scientist's attempt to discover why it was that the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up on takeoff in 1986. An absolutely harrowing story. Terrible disaster for anyone who saw it. You may remember that one of the astronauts, one of the 7 crew who died, was a teacher who was a civilian flying into space. And Richard Feynman, who had worked on the Manhattan Project and won a Nobel Prize for quantum physics, was tasked with discovering what had gone wrong in an age where the big institution that was NASA was not necessarily going to be terribly receptive to what was found. So if we could play clip number 2, please, and just get a sense of how we tackled that programme.
Chairman Rogers, the boat's just pulled in the crew compartment.
Can you tell me, was the oxygen activated?
Yes, Dr. Ryan. It was. We maybe won't make that public straight away. Excuse me.
Dr. Feynman, it's very important that this team stays together all the time.
Why?
It's been reported to me that you spent some time at Marshall, alone. That's not very helpful.
Oh, well, Mr. Rogers, I don't find it helpful to stand around.
The other commissioners are just being respectful.
And you're saying I'm not? You understand the implications of the oxygen being activated? I do. The astronauts had to do that themselves. Which means that they were alive for at least some of those 2 minutes and 36 seconds before they slammed into the ocean. Mr. Rogers, I'm an atheist. I personally doubt that they're touching the face of God, so I prefer to show my respect by finding the cause of their appalling deaths and not stand around looking sad. You know, I didn't even want to be on this commission, but now that I'm on it, I got every intention of finding out what went wrong. You know, I don't know that NASA did an excellent job.
So, bringing science to a mass audience, one way to do it is enlist a Hollywood A-list celebrity, if you can't get Dara O'Briain, of course. What it enabled us to do was not give that subject the documentary treatment, which would have demanded voices from both sides, people who could remember Richard Feynman and talk about him. And we felt that a far more engaging, compelling way to tell that story was through drama, where you can appreciate the emotions, the tensions, the dilemma, the horror far more vividly than I think the documentary form could have brought to the screen. So that's one way that we've found. Occasionally, clearly doesn't lend itself to every subject, but just every now and again, where you have a powerful science story like that, bringing it to screen through drama can be very, very effective.
Can I ask you, though, the big question for lots of scientists, which is using different forms like that, is it dumbing down? That's the question that scientists always come back at us with. Are we dumbing down the science?
We try very, very hard not to, Vivienne. What lies behind a production like that is a team of researchers who will be looking at the papers published at the time, who will be looking at evidence from various inquiries, commissions, and really drilling down into what was said, how it was presented. Of course, there is an extent to which that has to be condensed and simplified for public consumption. But always the aspiration is to remain not only true to the science, but true to the complexity and the wonder of the science, and not to diminish by reducing. And we're very committed to doing that at whatever level, whether it's BBC 1, 2 or 4. or three, as we occasionally have done, you know, you're pitching at a different level for a different target audience, but there is always an aspiration to be faithful to the science and bring as much of it as possible.
I think it's accessibility as well. I think we're often accused of dumbing down when we have an access point that is for everybody, because you can easily go in at a BBC4 level where basically your contributors are professors, your presenters are professors, and if you go in a level that you require a PhD in something to understand, then no one else is going to get it. So we always try and get our access point sort of appropriate for everybody, and then we build on that. So we did that in the Science Club, didn't we? We got some really complicated science, but we started off so everyone could understand.
There isn't any level at which you can pitch any popular documentary about science that somebody can't accuse it of dumbing down. Because the language in which actual science is written, the journal language of science, is extremely technical and extremely complicated, and anything below that, somebody who works at that level can regard that as being a simplification. But it has to be in any way to engage. The element is, because you said the danger is it being in 2 hour. There are two dangers in where you pitch it. There's the it being 2 hour danger, but there's also it being just an empty spectacle, that we just have lovely helicopter shots of volcanoes, but we explain nothing about volcanology. You have to find somewhere within that kind of spectrum to place yourself, and this is one of the advantages the BBC has, is that it has different outlets for different sizes of audience, where the BBC One for the general audience, BBC Two is slightly more specialised, BBC Four for the ultra specialised, BBC Three for a youth audience, so it's able to, the same department can pitch things at different levels, but you're never not going to get accused of dumbing down.
I know that Peter Higgs, he of the Higgs boson fame, said that it would take him 5 minutes at least to explain the Higgs boson, but I think you've done it in much less than that, and I think he's been rather more successful.
Yeah, we have. I mean, well, Higgs speaks very slowly, though. He's a very considered man, like whatever. He's a lovely fellow, but he does consider his words.
Doesn't have an Irish accent, that's the thing.
It is, but it's a... but you cannot do it without. I mean, I had somebody... and they'll also... You have to ignore some of these. I had somebody who said, who sent me a tweet after the 4th edition of Stargazing going, the other ones are not called solar systems. Ours is a solar system because our sun is called Sol. And wrote, I don't know why they don't get somebody intelligent to present these shows. So there is a...
We get a lot of tweets like that.
You can do nothing without there being some element, but you just, to a extent, you have to pitch your level. I mean, when we did Science Club, for example, one of the things that was guiding us was that there is a large population of people like me who did science in university, who don't work in the sciences, but know a little bit about it. The same audience who read science publications occasionally, or who fit to that part of the newspaper thing, who don't need to go right from the beginning, but would like to find out what's happening right now. And equally, there are people who you could spend an entire career in science popularisation explaining rubber sheet geometry and explaining how a black hole is formed. You could do that once a year for the rest of your life. You know, if you go to any science popular bookshop, you will find that there's a book on quantum and a book on relativity, and those books are rewritten every year because people will buy them every year, and they will go in one eye and out the other.
It's because they never get past the first 3 pages.
Well, there's an element of that, yeah. There's an element of aspiration, but there's, you know, it's that some of the great things you will end up explaining over and over again, but you're never not going to shift the dumbing down accusation.
No. I think what's very exciting about it, though, is finding that way to connect with people. And to anybody who accuses us of dumbing down, I would return the charge. Do you want people who are not science specialists to come to your subject or not? If you want them to come to your subject, you have to meet them somewhere that they can grasp what you're talking about. And that isn't going to be in the language of your last conference or your last published paper.
Right. So we've done the dumbing down bit, right? OK. We don't do the dumbing down.
Am I sounding passionate enough?
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually,
let's see the next clip.
I know you're rushing for things, but one small thing is that, because listen, I could be the poster boy for dumbing down.
You are a poster boy.
I'm a comedian who hosts science shows. I'm a very easy person to point at and go, well, that is typical of dumbing down. Even though I have an education in science that was 20 years ago, I'm clearly not an expert. I'm just someone who talked to experts. So I could be very easily accused of this. And, you know, on Twitter will occasionally be accused of this. But the people who never accuse this are scientists. Scientists are thrilled to have any kind of exposure of their subjects. They're very excited for this stuff to be communicated. They tend to be less, let's say, prissy about it than commenters tend to be about the whole thing. Scientists are generally really happy to have this stuff communicated.
So coming back to documentary form, which is our more traditional form, again, it's something that's really important to keep refreshing and keep reinventing. So the next clip that we'll show you comes from a really ambitious pair of documentaries called Operation Iceberg. I don't know if anybody managed to catch either of those. But we took a team of specialist presenters and scientists to an iceberg on an expedition for 6 weeks. And just to capture a flavour of what went on, if we could play the next clip, please. That's clip number 3.
British glaciologist Alan Hubbard wants to helicopter in to plant a GPS tracker to measure its fastest point, the very front.
And you think there's a spot we can get down there?
Not till that. I'll just jump out is the idea.
Yeah.
And a quick game is a good game.
OK, so 3 minutes, GPS on, right at the headland.
It's extremely hazardous. This part of the glacier will be the next to collapse into the sea.
He's calculated that if we put this device on, during the time that we're here, it will break free, and we'll get all the measurements up to that point. And that's cutting edge. I mean, you know, that's science at the edge.
There's no room for a full camera crew. Chris himself will have to film Alan. He needs to secure his GPS to the ice. But he must be quick.
Okay, 2-3 minutes, okay?
Oh my goodness me. Just look at where he is. Frankly, that is astonishing. From where Alan is perched on top of this part of the glacier, there has to be a 100-metre drop. And he's got a couple of minutes to get that drill and get that material in. And frankly, if there's any movement on the ice, there is no chance of him making it off of there.
It's just a pillar with this enormous crack down one side of it.
If I was going to bet on the next pillar of ice...
thing to go, it'd be that one.
The pinnacle has to topple soon. Alan's instinct tells him it won't be today, but he cannot know for sure.
Oh, that is astonishing.
Oh, that looks horrible.
Well, it genuinely was what you see, and that pillar of ice did collapse very soon after that. I'm pleased to say not with Alan Hubbard on it. But
I've got to ask a really stupid question, but is there a bit of an issue filling out the BBC health and safety forms before you go?
That was the monster, the mother of all health and safety forms. And you have, you know, we actually had a full-time safety officer on the expedition the whole time, but constantly people were having to evaluate what was safe and reasonable to do. Often, I have to say, driven by the scientists. You might imagine the production crew galvanising people to go and do dangerous things, but it was absolutely not. The scientists were gung-ho. The production team were actually rather more circumspect about what was safe to do or not. But what was really interesting about that programme was that very often when we make a science documentary, we already know the outcome. We know the end point of the story. We are telling the story because we already feel there's something worth telling and we're working towards that denouement. And this was really shaking up the documentary form because we simply didn't know. This was genuinely science in the making. The scientists out there were not repeating experiments for our benefit. They were doing experiments that they themselves didn't know the outcome of. So genuinely groundbreaking work happening as we were out there. And in terms of a documentary, that takes you to a very different space, and it takes the audience onto that journey of discovery with the scientists, with the presenters. And in the mix, you've got, you know, Chris Packham there, the presenter, acting as a cameraman. You've got Doug Allen, the cameraman, actually becoming a presenter, because one of the things that's fascinating is how you capture that imagery. And people's roles become blurred. It becomes very much less formal a form, and you end up with a film that feels very different to what one might consider a standard documentary.
Fantastic stuff. So that was really about how you changed the form. Let's now talk about using technology in different ways to make a new type of programme. So let me turn to you, Dara. Tell me about some of the things with Stargazing.
Well, Stargazing has done a couple of new things, both on screen and in terms of our engagement with the audience. I'm not sure which you want to go for first. Doing the
Aurora, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, because we've chosen different topics at different stage for Stargazing, depending on what is occurring in the skies above us. One of the ones that we finally got to this year that we've been planning to get to for years was to film the Aurora. Now, the Aurora makes for fabulous still photographs. You can see great time-lapse photography, but it's difficult sometimes to do a live pic. You can't have somebody standing in front of it generally, because you have to have different exposures and you have to allow time for the light to reach the lens and all that. Nonetheless, this year was the first year in which we could actually attack that problem completely, and we, to the extent that we actually were able to send an airplane up to track the Aurora, which I think we have a clip of.
Yes, clip 4, please.
Now, Liz is still out there chasing the Aurora out in Norway, and just a few months ago she took to the skies again, hoping to see whether any of the recent activity on the sun is producing any Aurora yet. So how's it looking out there, Liz?
Hi guys, welcome back to our world first Aurora hunting live from 30,000 feet. We've crammed into our little plane again. Our equipment is working very nicely. Pete Lawrence is with us again tonight on our flight, and let's take a little look outside our window, because in the last 10 minutes this beautiful sight revealed itself to us. Pete, there was a lot of structure in it, lots of beautiful curls at the bottom of it. It's very bright tonight, isn't it?
It's not bad at all, is it? There's loads of structure. It's been changing as I've been watching it out of the window, lots of folds in it and lots of vertical rays as well.
Am I wishful thinking here, or am I seeing a little bit of red, brown in those colours?
I think I can see a little bit of red off to the very right of it at the moment.
Yes, and that's a first for us. Very excited about that.
So just to be clear, so if you go to the see the Northern Lights,
yes,
you actually have to have a very long exposure in
generally
order to get
to catch
the green
that.
colours.
It has required now, time-lapse photography to get because the light is so.
So if you go to the Northern Lights, don't be disappointed, but you won't see green with your eyes.
You will with your eyes.
You will with your eyes, but you wouldn't with a normal camera. And you certainly can't stand somebody usually in front of it and have it in the background, because the exposures will be too different.
We were told it couldn't be done, weren't we?
Yeah.
We said we were going to film the Aurora live, and then everyone said, oh, you can't possibly, it can't be done. So
this is the first year in which we had the technology to do that. In fact, it happened so quickly and it worked so well that we had it on the first night, so it kind of ruined it for nights 2 and 3, where we're hoping to build up to seeing it. And oh no, we couldn't do it from the ground. Now we're going to send the plane up. But on the first night, the first shot we had of it was spectacular. And then we come back into studio, at which point we can explain which different gases they are, why we could show photographs taken of the surface of the sun that we got from NASA. We could show the actual coronal mass ejection that had caused the Aurora that we were then filming live, and then we were able to show how all the forces that have created this, and then we were able to turn to Chris Hadfield, the ISS astronaut, and go, Chris, when you're in space, did you ever see an Aurora? And he said, well, actually, we flew through one once when I was in the end of a robotic arm.
Like you do.
As ever, and the astronaut wins. But again, it was a case, and I know there are probably broadcasters, and particularly across Europe, I've spoken to broadcasters in Italy and various places, who don't have the scope to do that kind of stuff, who may be sitting there going, Jesus, how much money do the BBC have in order to send planes up and do that? And
not very much. We don't have very much money at all.
But nonetheless, we have sufficient, or there is sufficient. I'm never involved with this stuff, but having worked with other broadcasters, the commitment is there, which is a lucky thing for me coming into things, to do this kind of stuff. The money is there to create these kind of things, and you do get to do these incredible things.
It's fantastic, and actually, how can you contain your excitement when you're watching stuff like that? Because it's
fantastic. Well, actually, the problem is you turn into the most corny. You turn into
a 6-year-old
food television presenters, right? Because people who present television programs of food have to go yummy after everything they eat, because they have to communicate to the audience how yummy and delicious the thing is. And so there's a very limited range of things you can say to express excitement or how delighted you are. So you end up just going, "Oh, that's fantastic," and just sounding really insincere about what a genuinely impressive moment, because people just sound a bit naff on television when they sound excited about things. But no, it was astonishing how quickly we got it and how consistent it was. I mean, partly it was 3 good nights of Aurora, but also the technology worked immediately.
So behind all of us presenters are extraordinary technical teams who are devising the next big thing. So, Helen, just tell us about one of the programmes that you did with cats, which just
I'm
opened
just
a whole
pick up on the Aurora, actually, because to get all that to work, we had 9 different cameras in a field one night looking at light pollution over Reading, and at 3 in the morning we managed to get the right combination of camera, lens adaptation, etc., to film it, which is the first. And then on that plane, there were only 3 planes that we could find in the world that had the technology that we could actually go up there, turn off the wingtip lights, and broadcast live with a microwave link. So it all looked too effortless, didn't it? That was the only thing. It looked like it was easy, and it was really hard. But anyway, it worked, which was great.
So tell us about cats.
Yes. Cats was a horizon that did extremely well.
Horizon is a documentary strand.
A documentary strand in the UK. And it was basically, we were looking at what happens to your cat when it leaves the cat flap. What happens to it? What's the secret world of the cat? And I'll just show you the clip so you can have an idea of what we got up to. So this is clip 5, please.
And here's a bit of a spoiler. They're not sitting in their baskets.
We may love our cats, but how much do we really know them? They have a secret life that remains a mystery. With leading cat scientists, Horizon has set up an experiment to find out what they get up to.
Go back a bit, Kyle.
Across the week, 50 cats in this village will be put under 24-hour surveillance.
You're a good boy. You wanted to go outside and we can see what you're doing with that camera on.
They'll be wearing specially designed cat cameras to show us what they do when they're not at home. And carrying GPS receivers to reveal their secret journeys. What's unique about this experiment is that it reveals how 50 cats live crowded together, how they hunt and fight.
Really a piece of sort of classic standoff.
And the surprising strategies they use to get along. It raises the intriguing possibility that our cats may be changing, and that could be down to us.
So that's obviously taking... One of the great things about technology is it allows you to see the world in a completely different way. And this was basically about seeing the world through the eyes of a cat. So, we had lots and lots of people, lots of technology, basically they're miniature cameras.
And lots of cats.
And loads of cats, yeah. For someone who's allergic to cats, that's always quite interesting, but loads of cats. And we had these very miniature cameras which the BBC helped develop, and we then talked to the Royal Veterinary College in the UK, and they do this kind of thing on big cats, so cheetahs and things like that, so they put big collars on big cats. And we needed all that miniaturised so that a cat can only carry about 100 grams, so we had to make everything really, really small. And then again, set out the cats, no idea where they would go, no idea what the results would be, and the whole thing had to be shot in a week. So it was a big, quite audacious experiment, but that's the great thing about the BBC, is that you can take risks and you're encouraged to take risks, and although that's slightly terrifying, it's also very empowering. So we just went for it.
Genuinely, there was some real science.
Oh yeah, there's a scientific paper that's being written about that, so which is yet to be published, but it's genuine science being done on the back of some really quite cool technology.
And And also, because I remember we were in the show that followed it, so we got its inheritance. How much does Horizon normally gets? What, 1.5 to 2 million?
No, I think it got about 5 million, actually. It got a massive audience, so
You see, that massive audience tells you what you already know, that the British are just mad about animals.
Yes, yes, indeed.
But now, talking about mad, let's now turn to Richard Hammond.
Oh, no, sorry. It's Dallas Campbell.
Oh, Dallas Campbell, I'm
indeed.
So sorry.
Absolutely, no, that's fine.
This also mad.
Yeah, exactly. Also mad, indeed.
This is a supersized Earth, and that was part of the clip that we saw before, wasn't it?
Different one, actually. Yes, the one in the... Yes, that's right. The other thing that is great about technology is it not only allows you to see the world as you've never seen it before, or see it in a different way, but it allows you to do imaginary worlds. So basically, with graphics, I'll just show you a clip in a moment of a programme that was nominated for an RTS award and for its graphics and a BAFTA for its cinematography. And it looked at the man-made world, the fact that there are 7 billion of us on the planet now, and we therefore have to adapt the world. And so we asked some questions about the world and basically try to imagine the world as it may be. And so we used photoreal graphics to do that. So that really is like just having an idea and thinking, what would the world be like if, and then creating it on the screen, which is a very laborious and technological process, but you just get some really, really great, easy to understand images. So if you could just play clip 6, which is where we imagine what, with the tube in London, what if the underground was actually overground? If we made it as deep as it is below ground, above ground, just kind of what would London look like? And this is the result. Clip 6, thank you.
Imagine if the underground was overground. Some lines run so deep that if they were the same distance above ground, they'd be 10 stories high. We may take it for granted, but every day over 500 trains on 250 miles of track move nearly 3 million people.
It's Blade Runner. That is so cool.
Well, we're constantly searching out new technology to see if there are things that we can do with it. So, for instance, the film Gravity, we're already talking to Framestore about the effects that they did on the film Gravity and thinking, is there any way we could shrink the budget massively and adapt any of that for television? So we're just... Technology is just a wonderful way of us making bold, ambitious programmes that will draw people in.
The thing that I was just thinking about, when we saw the beginning clip with Dallas Campbell saying this is the highest anyone's been, I was just thinking, Anthony, no, the cameraman is above you.
Oh, yes, you're right. Yeah. That was a health and safety nightmare too. Yeah.
So, tell me about Planet Ant, because that involved a lot of... extra technology, didn't it?
It did. And possibly the best way to get into
cameras
this one
on
is to see the... Well, cameras on ants would have been a bit ambitious. One of the things we did do was to radio tag ants, which had never been done to the extent we'd done. I mean, really, this involved gluing, super gluing, tiny little transmitters to the back of soldier ants. Incredibly light, again working with the technology experts to make them small and light enough, and then setting receivers around the nest to see where they went. But I think possibly the best way into this is to have a look at the clip and you'll see. So clip number 7, please.
It's taken 6 months from planning to this. A new home for 1 million of nature's most extraordinary creatures. Ants. They fascinate us. They build complex, organized societies. And we've always drawn parallels between their world and ours.
It's basically
an ant production line. So what can we learn from ants?
1 ant in 2 million, we found her. Nice. Fantastic.
To find out, we've brought a working colony of leafcutter ants from the tropics of Central America. We've recreated their nest so that we can see inside. And for 1 month, we're going to capture every aspect of their lives. We'll track them.
I mean, this is going to be great, though, because this is going to tell us what these soldiers are doing in the ground.
We'll listen to them. Oh, that little chirp?
Yeah.
And get right up close to them.
Ah,
what's gone down the front? We'll go beyond our own ant metropolis to meet some of the most impressive ants on the planet.
It's not just a group of ants holding on to each other, it's a survival raft.
It is. It's a force to be reckoned with.
And discover the surprising ways in which ants are helping us solve global problems. I'm an entomologist, and even to me, what ants can achieve is astonishing. Our project will show their world as it's never been seen before, and reveal what they can teach us about ourselves.
Fantastic.
So, I mean, another very, very ambitious project, really just picking up from what Helen said about being able to take risks. And what was fascinating about it, again, coming back to this idea of seeing the world differently, if you took 1 million humans and dumped them around the other side of the world, we just wouldn't cope, would we? There'd be wars.
And these colonies are actually quite fragile. They rely on a fungus, don't they?
They do. I mean, this is what the ants live on and actually construct for themselves in a very complex and intricate way. But what it allowed us to do is explore what it is to cooperate, the biology of cooperation, looking at how this remarkable colony had restored essential services within 2 or 3 days, and after a few weeks had nurseries, graveyards, gardens, farms, you know, all this kind of mirror that we hold up to our own society, but of course they do it biologically in a very different way. But bringing that to the screen, one of the reasons so little is known about them is they tend to live underground. It's very difficult to see what they do. So the first thing we did, obviously, was to construct this nest designed as they would excavate it themselves underground. But beyond that, you're still dealing with the very small. And a lot of their business is conducted hidden away. And we had a BBC4 micro budget about as small as the ants themselves. So how do we do that? And we ended up, really, the watchword here is collaboration, Viv. We had medical endoscopes specially adapted. We had microphones specially adapted to hear the ants, one that could be quite literally stuck to the leaves that they were cutting, to hear the sounds that they were making, to communicate with each other and signal where there was a good source of food. We had, and then the radio tracking had never been done, so we were only able to do that with the largest ants in the colony, the soldiers, but they never come out, so even in our setup, we wouldn't really have seen them unless, A, we'd threatened the nest and they all came rushing out to defend it, or we tagged them. And again, this was groundbreaking science about which a paper is now being written, because we discovered that what they do is they set up patrols, and they have very particular patrolling paths within the nest, and this was never known before. Again, a collaboration with a university to devise technology small enough to make this happen. So it's really about defining what you aspire to do and bring to the screen, and then going out finding the people that can help you do it. And by and large, you find them, and people are very willing to collaborate and help you reveal.
And I think it's the case that very often with the BBC, if you go out and you say to your average academic, look, I've got a real problem. I want to see inside an ant's nest. And suddenly they get incredibly enthused and they go off and help you.
Absolutely. I mean, a remarkable degree of collaboration, without which programmes like that wouldn't be possible.
But it's not all fun, is it, Dara? Because when presenters do these programmes, we are subjected to the most awful things by the BBC. I have been burnt, I've been gassed, I've been put in a maggot farm where I was walking along a narrow pathway with pits on either side of me of maggots, this deep, and suddenly all the lights went out. And it's a very famous clip that keeps getting showed on the BBC, where suddenly the whole screen goes dark and all you can hear is this little voice, which is me, saying, I don't think I like this very much. But Dara, tell me the sort of thing that you've had to be subjected to.
People do like to see their presenters being relatively interactive. I've had to hold my hand into a tube of mosquitoes. I've been electrocuted. I have sometimes just to get the shot, sometimes to actually make the point. I mean, the clip we have is actually, I can't pretend that the clip that we have is any hardship at all, because we had a couple of astronauts on, we wanted to illustrate to people why it is a common misconception that the reason that astronauts live in weightlessness is because where they are in space has no gravity, which of course it does, and so to illustrate that point, well, we did the only thing we possibly do, which is send me out to take this particular trip. Is it clip 8, I believe?
It is clip 8, yeah, view in a plane, yes indeed.
So what is making us feel weightless?
Wow, that is incredible. Okay. It's astonishing. When it does this, it's like all of the weight leaves your body and you float off. And all we're doing is we are free falling towards Earth at the moment, along with the aeroplane. Okay? I should do more pieces of camera like this. Now, hello, how are you?
And it's just the same for astronauts in orbit.
What's happening in the ISS is they are basically falling towards Earth all the time, constantly. Sorry, where are you? I lost you there for a second, didn't I? And so it feels to them like weightlessness. And we're down.
The only difference between us is that I'm falling briefly towards Earth.
Sorry, Ben.
While astronauts are falling constantly around the Earth. Let me explain. Imagine an astronaut falling to Earth like me. Give him a push sideways and he'll keep moving sideways as he falls. Push him too hard and he'll head off towards the moon. But push him just right and he'll never get any closer or further away. He'll stay in orbit.
Wow.
In constant free fall, he'll feel weightless all the time. Whereas for me, the pleasure is painfully short-lived.
I'm okay, I'm grand.
Was that good fun?
It was fantastic. It's possibly the most happy afternoon of my life. So I can't.
But you know, I was asked to do this, and I went and hid because I'm one of those people that will never make an astronaut because I'm always car sick, and I just thought I can't bear to do a piece to camera with my sick floating past me. That would just be too awful.
There was a young scientist called Daniel, who's a British scientist who we met afterwards, and he had a stain on his jumpsuit where he'd obviously thrown up onto himself. And what they'd done is, because I'd seen this happen and wondered what was going on, he got sick. It was a science research plane, this one, rather than the usual kind of just fun plane. So he was in a group, they were doing a research, he fell ill. The people who organised the ship spotted this. They curled him into a ball, into a fetal position, and when the plane went into 0 Gs again, they pushed him down the plane and he rolled along the roof of the plane from the front to the back, where somebody else caught him and then unrolled him onto some seats. So our producer on the show instantly couldn't take it. It was knocked out completely and just lay on the ground, and then had to be taken to the back of the plane. It's people being ill all over the place. About 15, 16, number 19, I think, I began to get a bit queasy, but the adrenaline of knowing you're not going to get to do this again, it kind of keeps you going through that. Yes, they get us to do strange things, and they get us to do once-in-a-lifetime things as well to do that. But you hope it's all in the service of explaining the science.
Tell me about the centrifuge and Stargazing.
Oh, listen, because I think delightfully we're running too short to show that, where there was other clips we want to show.
Yeah, okay.
So they said we did the centrifuge as well, but that is as was even more unflattering than that was. If you can imagine my weight all gathered on my face. So it was a no, but there is, and some of the stuff we've done. I think you've tried to show the mark clip.
Yes. Should we jump because we'll run out of time otherwise.
We also do. There's a lot of these shows are the big spectacle shows that we have, or the big chance to do location shows and single camera shoots. I do a lot of studio shows, which allows us to do a smaller, more intimate form of experimentation, like this one, for example, on a material scientist called Mark Dovnik, who's a very, very good communicator as well, about the electrical structure of the brain. This is probably best explained.
Clip 11, if you do, we can jump to clip 11. Thank you very much.
What is TMS exactly? What do we do?
Transmagnetic stimulation. So we're putting a very powerful magnetic, but very brief magnetic field across the top of the surface of the brain here, and it's disrupting the normal firing of which is the motor cortex.
The brain is an electrical machine, essentially, and you're just running noise through it.
Noise through it, exactly, and that's disrupting his coordination.
And you're looking for a particular cortex, a particular area of the brain?
Well, this is the motor cortex, which is this thin strip, and because it's on the left side of his brain, that will be affecting the right side of his body, because you have the opposite side of your brain controlling the opposite side of your body. Yeah. So normally, this is what's called a fine motor control. Mark, with your right finger, touch the tip of your nose. Okay, that's quite good. Okay, so let's see what happens. Can you do that again? Okay. So, very bizarre.
Wow. Make him do that again.
What did it feel like?
It feels like I'm not in control of my hand. It feels like, yes, I don't know, a bit...
Strange spasm.
Weird spasm, yeah. Like, it's...
We can try something else. You want to try just writing? That's a good one.
Write your name. Tell you what, do a signature and then we'll see how you do.
Just to make sure I haven't lost my memory as a result of that.
All right, well, just check you can do it.
Who am I?
Your name is Mia Dovnik. Don't write the intro thing.
So he's firing at the moment, and then, of course... Okay. So I missed your spot there.
What's going on in his head?
Well, despite his willpower and control, when you're disrupting the electrical activity of the brain, no amount of will can change that effect. So he's basically losing motor control.
No long-term damage is done by this kind of experiment?
No, it's very, very brief, and it's been used lots of times in experimental work, in therapeutic use, and as a diagnostic tool.
We kept Mark there as basically a performing chimp for about, for the rest of the when we just got to throw balls into a basket, which he couldn't do, high-fiving, which he couldn't do. So yes, there are things, but the thing you're seeing there is on Science Club we had a studio audience who are standing around who are watching these experiments, and by the end of the show, I mean we'd one which is it's called the Lichtenberg, which is a charged perspex plate that you put into a particle accelerator, and then they get charged with electrons stored in it, and then you hit it with, you break the, you basically offer like a potential point where the charge all surges out of it, and it creates kind of a fractal effect within it. And we did a couple of those, but the audience all hang around after to see the other ones being done. Yeah. So there were 2 people gathered around, and we just kept hammering all these things and firing up, and the crew were packing up, but the crowd wanted to stay and watch these experiments being done. We'd Prince Albert drops, which are a long glass drop that you can hit with a hammer, they won't break, but if you snap off the end, it'll shatter, and the shatter will run down. We showed it with a ultra high speed camera. We've showed the glass drop, which is about, well, I say 3 feet long, and we see the shatter point moving all the way down, it breaking as it goes along at the speed of sound. Actually, it goes down the drop and explodes. And they all hung around to watch more of those being done at the end. The key to this is we're very lucky. This is the broadcaster who's committed to doing this. But while doing it, there is an audience, which is something that I think, sort of in the cold world of just commercial broadcasting, people are very nervous about doing that. But there is a massive audience of people who find this stuff extremely interesting and who have been often ill-served. I mean, we found one of the things we do, and we'll get this in quickly, is we do a lot of citizen science projects when we do stargazing, whereby we turn over raw data. For example, the one we did last year was raw data about finding, what was it this year?
This year's galaxies.
Oh, it was galaxies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Finding galaxies by process of gravitational lensing. So they would show because humans are much better at pattern recognition than computers are, so we would show them the bare information, just snapshots of sky, and then you'd see small semicircular images. And do you have a video this you want to show?
No, what we do is basically we send people to a website and they analyse data, just like this, and then people
Absolutely.
came up with...
And what happens, because we showed them the same 40,000 images to a number of different people, and the results begin to collate of good candidate images, and then those are sent off for proper... And now this is actually proper raw astronomical data. At this point, we've done this 3 times. We've mapped the surface of Mars. We have found exoplanets from the transit method.
Treppleton-Holmes B.
We found Treppleton-Holmes B, named after Treppleton-Holmes. 2 of the people found it. This one is called B. Spitch, which is named after a Polish 60-year-old called Spitch New, who has been an amateur astronomer all his life, has always wanted to spot something and have it named after him, and has now found a galaxy which is 12 billion years old. But this is genuine raw data that we get from astronomical surveys, and as we enter into the era of big data, there are more of these projects, and there is a queue of people who want us to bring it to our viewers, because we hand that over to the 70,000 people. They were viewed 7 million times by the end of the 3 days. So it is a fantastic light to shine. There's an enthusiastic audience out there who want to get involved.
And you could be the B. Spitch New if you watched it. You might be the one to spot it. So I'm now going to find out from some of you who has an innovation. Who has an innovation? There's somebody back here, I think. Oh, he's gone quiet now. Who has something that they would, something technical that they would like to talk about? Ooh, you've all gone quiet. Okay. So let me just find out, what is it that you do? Come and run round. So tell me what you do.
I mean, I say that in a very humble way, okay, when I say I do. And actually it was a question for Jacqueline, because when she was talking about science, I come from speech technology. That's one of my areas of research. So when she was talking about exciting experience, so her pitch range went like 300 Hz. However, when she was talking about didactics, it was like very narrow pitch range, about 100 Hz, no more. Just so somehow I should convince you that didactics is not that dull, and that we can also do inspiring and exciting things. And the thing that we do, not only me obviously, but my research group, is to try to entertain our learners. And this is a methodology called CLAIL, which is Content and Language Integrated Learning.
Okay.
And content, it stands for science as well. So.
Fantastic. There was somebody here as well. Tell me what you do.
Okay, my name is Rob Lauboer. I have a manager of a program that will help journalists in the fact-checking process. So there's a lot being said on the internet, and what we do is that we try to help them identify whether it's true or not, with all the shades of that are between yes and no. So it might be slightly true, a bit true, absolutely not true, and so on.
Okay, there's lots of absolutely not true on the internet. Anyone else got an innovation that they have? Anyone else got an innovation? Okay, what is it?
Well, it's a new way of thinking. We hear a lot in Brussels about policy and precaution associated with science and technology. And a number of us are very enthusiastic about introducing something called the innovation principle, so that policymakers...
Okay, I'm going to have you up here. I'm going to have you up here. Come on, then. Put your scarf down. Put your comfort blanket down. So, policy. Perhaps we don't think policy is interesting. Sit down over there.
I think you're here.
Okay.
I have no idea why you're here, but you're sitting down here.
Okay. So here's the microphone. What's your name?
Paul Leonard. I work for BASF.
So BASF...
It's a chemical company.
Right, okay. So, how do we get somebody to talk to us on television about something that's technical and complicated? So, would you like to just start your stopwatch running?
Sorry, no, I'm not prepared.
All right, okay. Yeah. So, first of all, just tell me what it is, this new theory of yours.
I'll count.
What is it that you'd want to tell the BBC?
Well, like the general public, a lot of policymakers here in Brussels have to make decisions based on evidence, on science, but they have no background in science. And there's a very important international guidance called the precautionary principle, which basically says if the evidence is not clear but there's a potential harm, policymakers shouldn't wait for the evidence to be clear, and for that reason should take precautions. And that's the basis of a lot of decisions about technology, new technologies, whether or not technologies are acceptable, and it's in the Lisbon Treaty. The point is that there is another side to precaution, which is also innovation, and that's why we're proposing that something called the innovation principle should also be adopted in policy making to get a balanced outcome of that debate.
Okay, so how long has he been speaking for?
I don't know, so my phone was switched off. I apologise.
Too
long. I would have said...
That's a very neat pressy. If you want to know how you explain that, you need an example. You need more examples of that. You need probably to explain evidence is one of the things that not exactly you have to explain evidence, but you need to reassert the importance of evidence. You start into that, and then you need to know to explain how this will move on from that.
Okay.
But actually, that's relatively. I think the audience, you're at the limit of how long before a question would want to come in to explain that. But you've obviously had to speak about this before. That's actually quite a nice elevator pitch of the stuff. Where you'd have to go with that, however, is show where that has made the wrong decision and where that has made the right decision. I presume this is what we're trying to illustrate here.
Yes.
In terms of how you'd have to show what decisions you believe haven't been made on that.
Okay.
And then you send somebody in a helicopter to shoot the right stuff.
Okay, so now we're going to ask you to do that again, because that first explanation was a bit long, and it took you quite a while to get to your new thing. So let's try and do that again, but let's do it in a shorter form.
I'm prepped. One moment, please, caller. I now have the technology. Okay, and you.
Now, that piece of technology you're using, a mobile phone, would now be in your hands if the precautionary principle was used in the sense that the potential impact on the environment was not fully understood.
Fantastic. That's an excellent
very
example.
Good.
Now you're impacting on people's lives. People are going, oh, really?
Right.
I didn't know that. Something that I've gained from you're telling me this. That's it.
It's a specific. It's the what's at stake and why should I care question. How does it relate to real life?
Okay, but what I'm trying to illustrate to you all is that the techniques that we use in the BBC to extract from scientists, because sometimes it's really quite hard to extract it, what it is that's the most important and key message about their work. This is what it takes to do it. But in doing this to this poor gentleman here, I hope I'm illustrating to you some principles that actually might be useful in anything you want to talk about, because the principles hold good. Okay, so just take it on from there. So tell me about your new work or your new venture.
Well, precaution is really important. We all have precautions every day. The question is, what about the risks of not taking a risk? Because it's not possible to innovate without risk, and we're here to talk about innovation. So how do we deal with that innovation risk? And we're proposing that actually we should have an innovation principle so that people who decide whether or not we can have phones or new technologies can make that decision based on a balanced judgment of precaution and
what would
risk.
an innovation risk involved?
What it would mean is that when a new technology coming from any entrepreneurs here comes to the European Union and seeks approval, the policymakers can say, right, what are the risks? If there's a need for precaution, it's there, but actually there's also a need for innovation, and it's the principle that should be looked at in a balanced way before a decision's made, rather than just saying, let's ban the phone because there are uncertainties.
Now, haven't you got a vested interest as a chemical company in bringing new chemicals onto the market, which you don't yet know anything about?
Absolutely. There is no innovation without risk. And this is the point. You don't leave the house in the morning with precaution alone. You would never get out of bed. You wouldn't have the cup of coffee, which contains all sorts of chemicals in it. You wouldn't leave the front door. You wouldn't get on your bicycle. You wouldn't get in a car. The whole thing is how to do that in a way where you balance the benefits with the risks. And that's what we're proposing by establishing something called the innovation principle. It's an innovation.
Oh, however, then you'd ask, sorry, and then we're now into this. I think the people already think that they're balancing the benefit and the risk. All you're really doing is moving that point that they've drawn in the sand slightly closer towards innovation than it was previously.
Well, if I could be a little bit provocative...
Go for it.
We need people like you to engage in the interpretation of science and where it meets policy, because that's a real battleground now between those who drive policy for whatever reasons, including organisations like my own, and scientists who are producing evidence. And Anne Glover was here yesterday pleading with people to look at the evidence and make decisions based on the evidence, and not to blame it on the science. And that's a really, really interesting area of interpreting science, which I don't think the BBC's really got into.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for being our stooge.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
So, just as a general principle, set out the context. If you have points to make, don't make more than 3. Make them short. And that's the way to get your science or your piece of technical information across.
However,
one
also very interesting principle, which is that for all the fact that you could regard this entire session as justifiable in many ways, but the BBC giving itself a bit of a pat on the back for the excellent work. The final voice we had on here told us stuff that the BBC aren't actually doing enough of and should be doing more of. And so that will always continue to be the case, that people will tell us.
So continue to shout at the BBC.
Yes, yeah, essentially.
So just finally, I just want to look at the digital future, because the digital revolution absolutely surrounds us, and we're increasingly using social media and audience interaction to enhance the viewing experience. So Dara and Helen, tell us a bit more.
Well, I think we kind of covered a lot of it with the citizen science projects, that it is very much more a more interactive medium than it was, say, 5 years ago. But a lot of the reason that people like myself are involved in science broadcasting is because there was a movement, particularly around the foundation of Twitter, where a lot of people found, like bloggers and science writers and people with an interest in science like myself, kind of discovered each other and discovered a community and discovered an audience. You can tailor your content specific to the audience in ways that you weren't able to 10 years ago. The show I do about maths, which isn't on the BBC, is on a small digital channel, which, as I said, and it gets 300,000 per viewing, 3 or 4 viewings across the week, which adds up to about 1 million, which might be fine if you got all 1 million on BBC One or BBC Two, or BBC Two even BBC Four. It wouldn't do well on those channels, but the fact it's on a small channel, it's on a small digital channel, which may only get 200,000 anyway, if you get that same 300,000 who will come to it, which is what people do now, they will find the content they want and go to it, rather than sitting passively waiting for the content to come to them. They will go to it, and it's an enormous triumph for that small channel to have this small but slightly larger than they're used to show on it. So you can tailor your content now thanks to the digital media, and the audience will come to you much more than they used to. And a lot of this is because of Twitter. And people follow you because of an interest in you, and suddenly you find that you've got 1.6 million followers or whatever, but they're very focused on what they want.
And how many followers have you got on Twitter?
Sorry, that figure wasn't chosen at random. I have 1.6 million followers. I chose a specific example, but you do find that you can almost laser sight what you're doing via these kind of methods in a way that you previously had to scattergun broadcast. Yeah.
It's a very different kind of engagement as well. I mean, taking the Operation Iceberg
yes, tell us about
as
that,
a great example.
You've got a clip, haven't you?
Well, there's a little clip which we could run, so that's number 16. This is just to prove that pillar of ice was going to fall as well. And we saw it earlier.
We have to finish with the pillar of ice.
They have already seen how icebergs evolve as they carve off the front of their mother glacier.
That's one of the biggest bits of natural destruction I've ever seen.
Now the team's attention is turning to one of the biggest icebergs in the world.
This is super, super hard ice.
It's a good illustration of the approach we've tended to take and are actually only beginning to shift away from. Typically what the BBC's done is, around the time a programme transmits, put clips like that up, and some of them become very popular. Recently we did a series on called Inside the Animal Mind, and we had a terrific experiment we filmed with a New Caledonian crow, this unique species of crow on a South Pacific island, that for the first time scientists observed it solving an 8-stage puzzle in which the stages of the puzzle had to be solved in precisely the right order for this crow to secure the piece of food. Now that clip, when the programme went out, we put this up. Within about 10 days, it had 3.5 million hits from around the world. And it made us think, if we'd actually got our act together and taken that bit of content and put it out there before the programme went out, it would have generated a buzz around what we were doing and might have built a profile for the series. But the other thing that was really insightful for us is that literally during the programmes, it's incredible now, and you probably find this as well, Dara, the tweets that are happening, while the programme's transmitting, people are responding instantaneously to something they've seen and they want to share it. There's a real interested community of people wanting to share this content even as it's going out. Operation Iceberg did actually do what we're not always terribly good at doing, which was ahead of the transmission, realising that this was a really unique project. The scientists were blogging, they were sharing photographs on Flickr. The British Antarctic Survey had somebody among the bunch. They were also, via their own channels, blogging, sharing photographs ahead of transmission. We had a tracking service, which normally is maybe tracking truckloads through the Middle East, which put a GPS tracker on the iceberg, and you could do iceberg watch and track the berg over the weeks prior to and after the transmission of the programme. And in various different ways, as Helen's indicated with Stargazing as well, initiatives like that which are not actually going to be reflected in the final programme but are built around the content are ways of reaching the interested audience. And we're learning all the time how you do that and how you connect, and watching the tweets come in as a programme's transmitting is always surprising and engaging, and it's giving us pause for thought about what we do in the future to build that interested community further.
We actually had a tweet from Commander Chris Hadfield to Stargazing, which we thought was really cool. So he tweeted us from the ISS.
You can use Twitter essentially as the same as those testing devices they have for audiences when they watch American political speeches, where they turn the buzzer left and right depending on how engaged they are. You can watch Twitter as a programme goes out. I remember doing once, we had an early record for Science Club, and we all sat in the pub while the show was on and watched, instead of watching, watched Twitter, and you could see the volume of tweets goes up and down depending on how interesting some things are. People express surprise, or they ask questions, or they're engaging with it, and you can actually use that as a barometer of what bits worked and what bits didn't work. People will tell you instantly.
So I hope that you're all tweeting right now saying that you've had a fantastic experience here with Dara, Helen and Jackie. The BBC is going to continue to explore new ways of bringing the science on which all our lives depend to the general public. And it's been a great pleasure, actually, for me, working for the BBC. It is the best job in the whole world. And I'm delighted that we've been able to show you some of what we bring to you. So thank you, Dara O'Briain, Helen Thomas and Jackie Smith.